big thing is the Kawasaki Versatile System 1100, and that's where the name Versys comes from. Now, in case you're wondering, yes, this bike looks almost exactly the same as the old Versys 1000, except for color changes. But as the name suggests, it actually gets a new engine. That is an inline 4-cylinder engine that has grown from 1043cc in the Versys 1000 to 1099cc. Power and torque have also got a good increase. It's gone from 120 horsepower to 135. Torque has gone from 102 to 112. So this is an improved motorcycle, and we're going to tell you what it's all about today. Let's start with that engine. The Versys 1000 and now the 1100 have always been about the 4-cylinder engine, and it's a wonderful engine for many reasons. Since this is a 4-cylinder engine, everybody loves how 4-cylinders sound. Let's start with that. Okay. Basically, what's down there, first of all, let me address, is mud. We've been riding in the monsoon, and no matter how much you clean the bike, more mud comes out. So don't worry, that's not oil. But what I can tell you about the sound is that it is actually quite a quiet motorcycle. The studio makes everything sound awesome, but in practice, when you're riding calmly, this is a really low-profile, subtle-sounding inline 4-cylinder engine. It's not the kind of bike that attracts attention everywhere. When you open it up, though, it makes a great sound. Under hard acceleration, 4000 RPM onwards, there's a really nice induction sound, and it is exciting. This is an exciting engine when you do that. But what I really like about this engine is that it's not the typical inline 4 that just explodes at high RPMs. This is an engine that builds power. It keeps building and it builds stronger and stronger, but there's no sudden RPM point where things go mad. It's also a rather relaxed engine. You blip the throttle and you can see that the revs don't spike up as fast as they do on a sports bike, and they also take a little time to settle back down. I suppose it's got a heavier crank than you'd normally get in a sport bike engine, and that results in a more relaxed nature, which really matches the character of a bike like this. It is actually quite easy to ride at low speeds. In the city, you've got a slightly heavy clutch. There is a fair amount of heat coming out, particularly on the right side if you get stuck in traffic for a long time. But it's not awful, and the engine cooling system manages just fine. So the bike is not bad in the city. Once you get out of the city, it's actually quite calm at normal speeds. You can do 70, 80 kilometers an hour and enjoy being on that smooth 4-cylinder engine with wonderful drive. Another thing I like about the Versys 1100 is that it doesn't hide speed from you in a way that some of these super adventure tourers can. Those bikes, things like the Multistradas now, can be doing high triple-digit speeds and you're not really aware of it, which is a very dicey thing on our roads. This motorcycle is capable of very big speeds, but it also lets you know that you're going fast. 100 kph comes up at just 4000 RPM, and you still have all the way to go till 10,000 before the red line kicks in. So there is a lot of speed in reserve here. But there are two reasons why this bike lets you know how fast it's going. The first is that it's really quite short geared. Now, when Kawasaki upgraded to the 1100 engine, they said that they increased the gearing in 5th and 6th gear to try and make it a little more long-legged on the highway. That may be the case, but this is still a very short geared engine. It'll do 6th gear at 30 kilometers an hour, which is again really very nice on Indian highways because we keep slowing down and accelerating. Here, you can slow down with the traffic, keep it in 6th and just ride away, and that's a really nice thing. The other side of that, though, is that you can hear the engine feeling like it's revving a little high. Again, it's only 4000 RPM at 100, but you hear it. The second thing is that there's also a slight high-frequency vibration that starts to build above 4000 RPM. It's very slight, but you feel it in the tank, in the pegs, and it just lets you know that you're carrying speed. At no point does this vibration get intrusive. It's really quite high frequency, but it's there. Maybe it's due to the fact that this is quite a new engine. It's only done about 800 kilometers. It's had its first service, but it is new and it may well smooth out a little bit, but that slight buzziness is a part of the character. But the bottom line is that this is a relaxed, very powerful, but also effortless engine, and I think that goes very well with what this bike is. Now, if you look at it, it's some sort of a combination of an adventure bike and maybe a tourer. And to be fair, it's not a very pretty thing. The Versys has never been an attractive motorcycle, and I mean, look at it. It's this weird U-shaped thing with lots of mass up front and lots of mass at the back. I remember when I walked into the showroom and I saw it parked next to all the other Kawasaki's, it looked really big, intimidatingly large. And one of the reasons for that is not just the large size in the front, but how huge and wide these seats are. They're enormous. And that's when you realize that Kawasaki has made sacrifices with the design and beauty of this bike. It's quite an awkward looking thing, but it does that to give you comfort. We put Gavin on the back of this motorcycle. He usually hops onto the back of every bike we test and gives me his feedback. And he says that this is unanimously one of the nicest pillion seats he's ever been on. Lots of room, really wide, really comfortable. There's a little scoop in the seat out here that holds you in place. These grab handles are amazing. He says that this is one of the best pillion seats under 20 lakh rupees, probably one of the best pillion seats in the business. And that is what the Versys really stands out for. It's a phenomenal road touring bike, especially if you're carrying two up. These grab handles are also designed to engage with Kawasaki's optional pannier boxes that slot in there neatly. Funny enough, there's a really big rack at the back. The sticker out here says that it can only hold 6 kgs. Now, I weigh a little more than 6 kgs and it doesn't seem to be bothered by that. So I'm sure you can carry more than 6 kilos on that without much stress. But back to the comfort factor. It's a big motorcycle, fully fueled with a 21-litre tank brimmed. It's 257 kilos, which is right up there with the big Multistradas and the GSs. And you feel that weight.
What's interesting is that while this bike has an 840mm seat height overseas, in India we get a lower 820mm seat height. The company tells us that there are no changes to the suspension to achieve this, and it's all been done via a different rider's seat. Now, despite what must be reduced padding to make this happen, the seat still feels nicely padded and quite comfortable.
On the move, it's actually quite balanced. It behaves very well, but like large top-heavy motorcycles, you need to be careful at slow parking speeds, slow speeds in traffic, or if you've parked on a very rocky surface and you're riding out, that's when it starts to be a little awkward, and it does require a little bit of confidence and skill from the rider. Once you're moving though, it really doesn't feel cumbersome in any way. Handling wise, it's interesting. This is not a sport tourer. I would not go so far to call it that. You can carry good speed through the corners. There's a decent amount of lean angle available. The tires are pretty decent, but it's not the sort of bike that you want to hustle in the corners. And by that, I mean, you don't want to accelerate hard, brake, turn, accelerate hard, brake, turn, because that's when you start to get quite a lot of motion in the suspension and the bike starts telling you it's not really happy with you doing that. Carry a good flow to the bends and you'll keep up with most motorcycles, but it's not a very sporty thing and you will get that sense when you're riding it. What is really very nice is the suspension. Now, this has 150mm of travel at both ends, slightly more at the rear, 152mm, but it's basically really very good suspension for a road bike. It's not like an adventure bike, and that means that it can take bad roads on very well. There's a decent amount of ground clearance. We haven't scraped it on anything, about 150mm of ground clearance. But it's a sort of bike where you don't need to fear bad roads, but you do need to respect them. You don't want to go railing through them like you would on an ADV motorcycle. The other aspect to consider with this bike is on your tours and travels, you may come across a seriously difficult off-road section. It will get you through it, but it will be an uneasy, awkward feeling. Those are 17-inch rims, and while these tires look quite slim because this bike is so big, it's sport bike size tires. It's 120 front, 180 rear, and you're on road rubber. So when you're on an off-road situation, it's a little uneasy and you want to get through that as soon as possible. On the road though, comfort for the rider is fabulous. It's a very neutral riding position. I like what Kawasaki has done with the windscreen in that it's not too large, it does let some air through to you, and it does a good job of preventing helmet buffeting. So low position or high position, I found that the helmet buffeting was fine, but it's a loud windscreen. You will really hear a lot of wind noise, and if you don't ride with earplugs, that can get tiring. Something to keep in mind. Features-wise, there's two ways to look at it. On the one hand, you get a pretty decent feature set. On the other hand, there are some reminders that this is one of the last of the old school Japanese bikes. Let's start with the good. You've got 3 levels of traction control and 2 power modes. So you can reduce the power mode if you want something more relaxed in the city. To be honest, even full power mode is fine, but I found that full power mode, when you release the clutch and get on the gas, it can be a little reactive. Low power mode completely takes care of that, but either way, the fueling on this bike is excellent. You've got 3 traction control levels. We were riding in wet conditions, never really felt the need to go below level 2, but it wasn't too intrusive either, so that works well. You've also got a power outlet here and this USB Type-C port. This really shakes quite a bit when you're riding, and this wire doesn't look very nice, but it is supplied by the company as standard. Quality all around is quite nice as well. The switchgear looks and feels nice. The plastic quality is good. But then we get to the aspect of reminders that this is a rather old motorcycle. You've still got a digital analog display. It's lovely to see an analog rev counter, but a TFT sort of is easier to navigate through some of these functions, and it does look more modern. So it depends on what school of thought you belong to, but there are plus and minus points to that display. Something else that bugs me is that this screen adjustment mechanism is the same as it used to be, and it's not really very intuitive because you need to unscrew both sides, raise it, and then tighten it again, which means you cannot do this when you're on the move. Something else that I find missing on this motorcycle is that it doesn't have a bidirectional quick shifter. The Ninja 1100, which uses the same engine, gets that. The bike is more expensive.
Thankfully, you can option one for about 27,000 rupees more.
You do get cruise control, which is pretty essential on a motorcycle like this, but there's no heated grips, heated seat, and as far as I can tell, those aren't optional extras as well. In terms of suspension adjustability, it is fairly simple. You have preload and rebound. Both of them are on the right side fork leg. The left side is non-adjustable, so all adjustments get made there. And it's the same thing on the rear. Rebound adjustment on the shock and a very nice remote preload adjuster. So if you're putting luggage on or a pillion on, you can quickly add in some preload. On that topic, the bike feels really balanced even with the pillion on board, and it's almost like it was made to do that. Now, a fun side note, this is a large, intimidating, heavy motorcycle, but Kawasaki has made a fantastic main stand. It is so easy to use that just for fun, we asked our videographer, Roshni, who's just 5'2", if she wanted to try putting on the stand, and she managed to. Wow. She said she didn't want to ride the bike, but putting it on the main stand, yeah, that was no problem at all. So really well engineered, and it's something some Indian manufacturers can take a note of as well. On the topic of features, one thing I must not forget to mention is that the Versys 1100 comes with its own security gate, although I hear that a security guard is not available as part of the package. Jokes aside, Kawasaki continues to make hilarious sari guards, and we will continue to have a little fun with it.
And with that elephant in the room addressed, let's move on to how much this bike costs and what kind of an experience that money is buying you.
Now, the price has gone up compared to the 1000, but at 12.9 lakhs ex-showroom, it is still a good deal more affordable than smaller adventure bikes like the Tiger 900 GT and things like that. Now, granted, this is not an adventure bike, it is a road tourer, and you need to be aware of that. Effectively, whether this bike makes sense to you or not depends on what you're after, and the two standout features with the Versys 1000 are its engine, the inline 4 is a lovely thing, and its amazing touring comfort. There really isn't any other bike like this unless you really extend your budget to almost double and look at something like a BMW S1000 XR, but that's a motorcycle on a different level. And I think it's worth pointing out that yes, you may consider that I have an adventure looking thing, I have 135 horsepower, so maybe I'd compare it to a GS or a Multistrada. It's not that sort of a bike. Those are far more advanced, more capable motorcycles, and the price difference reflects that. The Versys though is a genuinely lovely motorcycle. If you want to keep it to the road, you don't mind the size, that is very essential, and you want an inline 4 engine. There really isn't anything else out there like it. But before I end, I must say that if you want those virtues of a easy to live with bike with a great engine, there's also the Ninja 1000. Yes, it has a slight lean forward, but by sport bike standards, it's a really comfortable thing. It has the same engine, it's smaller, easier to manage, more fun to ride. And between the two, I find myself more fond of the Ninja 1100. Either way, whether you go for the Versys 1100 or the Ninja 1100, the bottom line is that Kawasaki is offering you a very unique, big inline 4 experience with both these motorcycles that works pleasantly well on our roads. And that is a very nice thing.